What's the story, Morning Glory? What is the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of Married at First Sight UK Season 7, Episode 11, Commitment Ceremony Number 2. So let's start off with April and George. So before we get to the commitment ceremony, April and George are having a conversation in their apartment about Thomas, and April wants to know why Thomas is lying on her. Well, because you spilled the beans. Thomas thought that he could confide in you and say certain things to you about another castmate, and you ran and told that castmate exactly what he said about her. So he doesn't want to have to face the wrath of the group, by everybody knowing that he called Shanita these horrible things. So he's going to lie and say that you said it. I understand that what he said was horrible. I just don't understand why April would run and tell Shanita. You sit there and listen to Thomas saying these things, and then you ran and told Shanita. So are you friends with Thomas? Because Thomas felt comfortable enough to tell you these things as if y'all were close enough for him to confide in you. But then you run and tell Shanita as if you're close to her and to repeat to her what someone else had said about her. So where exactly is your loyalty, April? Moving on from there. So Thomas and Adrian, they're arguing. I'm not even sure exactly what they're arguing about. I don't know if they're arguing about Shanita. I don't know if they're arguing about something else, but they're having an argument, and it gets really bad that Thomas has to get up and walk away. He doesn't want to continue talking to Adrian. Moving on from there, Shanita and Jordan. So they had their first argument. Shanita and Jordan was one of the stronger couples. They were getting along extremely well until we saw some cracks in their relationship at the dinner party. So at the dinner party, when they were passing around the honesty box and Jordan was asking, he was reading from, I think he was reading the instructions of how to play the honesty box game, and he messed up on a word, and Shanita corrected him, and Shanita told him that he needed to concentrate. And that kind of gave us a glimpse on what is going on behind closed doors. So it seems like Shanita corrects him a lot, and she points out his errors a lot, and it doesn't make him feel good. He doesn't like it. And so they had an argument about that. And Jordan had said that Shanita was not a nice person, and that hit her really deeply, because you can tell that a person like Shanita has always seen herself as a likable, nice person and not problematic, and someone that everybody kind of gravitates towards. And so it kind of cut her pretty deep when he said that he didn't consider her a nice person. So we're going to get deeper into that at the commitment ceremony. We get a glimpse of Zoe and Jenna. They're also having a disagreement about this whole veganism thing. Lord have mercy. We're still on that. So the bottom line is, Zoe tells Jenna that she doesn't want to hear all the gory details of what's done to the animals when they're being prepared for consumption, for human consumption. She doesn't want to hear that. And Jenna tells Zoe, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to lie. So, if I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to tell you the truth about it. And that's just how it is. And if you can't handle the truth, then this is just not going to work. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit deeper later. Keisha and Kwame. Now, Keisha confuses the hell out of me. I'm pretty sure that people who watch this show were very much Team Keisha, and it's understandable. I like Keisha. I'm having a problem with Kwame, but I'm not understanding Keisha, because at the dinner party, she made it seem like because the question was asked, why aren't they intimate when they were playing the honesty box game? And Kwame said it was because of him. Okay. And I thought, okay, that's true, because Keisha wants to be intimate with Kwame. Kwame does not want to be intimate with Keisha. So therefore, Keisha and Kwame are not being intimate with one another. And it's because he pumped the brakes on that. But then she kind of didn't like that. And she was like, whether or not we're intimate is not just dependent on you. It's also dependent on me. Well, you do need two to tango, Keisha. We get that. Otherwise, this becomes a criminal matter. Yes, we do need two to tango. Both of you have to agree to be intimate. But if he's saying no and you're saying yes, doesn't that mean that he's the one that's making the decision on whether or not y'all are intimate? I was so confused about that. So she didn't like his answers to that question. She made it seem like he was very chauvinistic and misogynistic, and that, kind of like didn't think that she should have a voice or an opinion. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you even get that? You're the one that's throwing yourself all over this man. He doesn't really want to play like that with you. And because he said, we're not intimate because of me, you got offended, and then you kicked him out of the apartment. So that night after the dinner party, he had to sleep somewhere else. She wouldn't even let him inside the apartment. Okay. I'm very lost with Keisha. But then at the commitment ceremony, she says something completely different, and we'll get to that later. So then there's a scene where they get together in like small groups, and they're talking about the state of their marriages. And PJ, he's with a couple of guys. I'm not exactly sure with who. And PJ's feeling really down that he is still being friend zoned by Jess. He wants the relationship to progress further, but it's not. He has all the feels for her. He's attracted to her. He likes her. He says he loves her to bits. Okay. Even though they just met, he says he loves her to bits. He says that, he really wants to make something out of this, but she has definitely friend zoned him. And then I began to wonder. Now, I don't know what the race relations are in the UK, but in America, race is a very big deal. We're like obsessed with race in America. So I'm just wondering, like, is it a race thing? Is it because, he is black and maybe she didn't want to be with the black guy? Or is it really because she's just not really feeling him? They're not that compatible. I mean, can race play? This is my question. In the UK, on shows like this where people are being matched, if different races are being matched, is that a big deal or it's not a big deal? Because in America, it would be something worth mentioning. Like we had for this season, we did have an interracial couple. The husband was white. The wife was half black and half white. And he had no problem with it. He didn't have an issue at all. But her family had asked questions about, are you used to dating a black girl? How do you feel about the fact that they matched you with a black girl and all this and that? It became a topic of conversation, at least with the family. So I wonder, in the UK, is race a topic of conversation when it comes to people dating? Or is it just like y'all don't really see race? That's my question there. So then we get to Shanita and April. They're having a conversation, with their little group. And Shanita tells April that Thomas said that it was April that I called Shanita those horrible names. April is absolutely shocked, and she refuses to she says she's not going to speak to Thomas until he apologizes. There's a lot. I hate it when you're watching a show and what goes on camera is related to or affected by something that went on off camera, because we don't know the conversation that took place between April and Thomas. And so we're not in a position to say, okay, April is lying or Thomas is lying. We don't know. So we're very much in the dark. And so it really doesn't even matter what they say, because we don't know what was said. They're both not giving us 100% honesty. They're both are not being truthful about that conversation. And it's basically he said, she said. And so because they're battling this out on camera over something that happened off camera, us, the audience, we're completely lost. And we feel very detached from this drama, this April, Shanita, Thomas drama. Moving on from there, Keisha. So Keisha wants Kwame to know that she owns her body and he cannot dictate to her whether they sleep together or not. That's true. That's absolutely 100% true. In a situation, if he wanted to sleep with you, but you didn't want to sleep with him, then what you're saying makes complete sense. He cannot tell you when y'all are going to be intimate. He doesn't have that authority. It's your decision to make. If he's letting you know, hey, I'm here, I'm down for it, I want to be with you, I want to sleep with you, it is up to her whether or not it happens. 100% true. But in this situation, she has already let him know that she wants to sleep with him. He doesn't want to sleep with her. So I'm not understanding why she feels like this man stole her voice or stole her power as a woman on when they can be intimate. Because it's basically, he's the one that should be telling her, hey, you can't dictate to me when we can be intimate, because she wants to throw down at any given moment. He doesn't want to. And she kind of sometimes puts the pressure on him. And so it's basically, he should be the one to tell her, you cannot dictate to me when it's going to be the right time for us to sleep together. Because she's the one that's trying to make that decision. I'm so confused with Keisha. So then we get to the commitment ceremony. We start off with April and George. April and George are fine. They've had a great week. Yes week was wonderful. April was really proud of George that he overcame his fear of heights, because she took to go, not bungee jumping, but to like scale the building of the wall of that really tall building. And the experts asked April about the Thomas Shanita situation, because they could tell at the dinner party that something was brewing amongst the group, and so the experts wanted more information on it, and April refused to talk about it. And I'm like, this is your chance to vindicate yourself, that you did not say those things about Shanita in front of everybody, but she didn't want to address it, which made me extremely suspicious about what really went down, and is she being 100% honest. So George says that his trust in her has strengthened, after that whole kissing the girl in the hot tub thing at their honeymoon. He kind of lost some trust in her, but they had a great week, and he has regained his trust in April. So moving on to Jess and PJ. Now this was kind of sad. So with Jess and PJ, they are definitely struggling because, PJ's in it, Jess is not so much. And so Jess talked about how they did karaoke for Yes Week. They had a really good time, and it was a lot of fun. And then the experts asked her, do you feel any like attraction or chemistry with him? And she said she doesn't. She really doesn't. She says that she kind of imagined herself being matched with someone who likes to, watch football and go to a pub for a pint. That's the kind of partner she was sort of seeking it, and I guess he's just not that. And so the experts told her, well, it's not so much about interest, it's about compatibility. Interest does not mean that you'll be compatible. And I was thinking to myself, but wouldn't it be better if you did have the same interest? Would it be better if you did have the same interest? Okay, I don't know. So she really struggled with attraction. She doesn't feel attracted to him. She doesn't feel chemistry. She doesn't feel a spark with him. And she had to be honest about it. And so they asked PJ, well, how do you feel when you hear her say these things? And he says, obviously I feel bad. Nobody wants to be rejected, but he continues to compliment her, but she's a great woman. She's this, she's that, she's wonderful, she's amazing. And but it wasn't going to work out. So Jess had chosen to leave the experiment, and PJ, when Jess gave her decision that she wanted to leave, PJ asked her, before he revealed his decision, PJ asked her, basically like, is there any hope at all? Is there any scintilla of a possibility that things might turn around for us? And she said no. And so then he said that he decided he was going to leave. So they are out of the experiment. Good luck to both of them. Moving on to Whitney and Duca. Man, oh my God, it was so wonderful to see Whitney and Duca get along. It was wonderful to see Whitney just soften up. She was laughing, she was giggling, she was fun. She was a lot of fun. So yeah, they're doing great. They're working on their communication. They're getting along a whole lot better. Duca talked about how they're actually really trying, because like when they're preparing breakfast or something in the morning, they're playing the music, they're getting along better. They're having more fun with one another. And so it was really, really nice to see that Whitney and Duca, things are improving. Now, when it comes to physical attraction and chemistry, they're not quite there yet. I think they both said that they need to be, I forgot what Whitney said, like why she's not quite there yet with the chemistry with Duca. But Duca said that for him to be attracted to a woman, she has to stimulate him intellectually, because he says looks fade, and under her breath Whitney says my looks will never fade. So their chemistry is not there yet, and I'm not surprised, because they just gotten over a huge hump. They just overcome a huge challenge of just being in the same room with one another. So obviously I'm not expecting them to be like at that point where they want to tear each other's clothes off. So they're doing fine. They both decided to stay with one another. Shanita and Jordan. So Jordan feels like Shanita was constantly, digging at him, pointing out his flaws, telling him that he was clumsy, telling him that he was lacking conversation. And the real kicker, Jordan felt highly offended and deeply hurt when Shanita questioned whether or not he had ADHD, or if he had ever been diagnosed with ADHD. And so he feels like, well, if you're not a doctor and you're not an expert or a specialist in this area, you have no right to question me on something like that. And so it was pretty much understood that Shanita overstepped her boundaries when she asked him about that. And I think the experts have suggested that maybe they take a little bit of time apart to kind of like recollect themselves, because right now the emotions are extremely high between them. Jordan feels very offended by Shanita. Shanita feels extremely emotional. She was crying when she was sitting next to him on the couch. They both looked completely deflated, but they both decided to stay. So as they were going back to sit down amongst the other couples, Kwame had to open up his big mouth, and he says to Shanita, no more diagnosis. And Shanita got really upset about that, because she just has been put through the ringer on the couch in front of the experts about, talking about Jordan possibly having ADHD. And now here you have Kwame kind of like making a joke of it and saying, no more diagnosis, Shanita. And Shanita told him, hey, look, stop. I've just been through a really tough time, and don't come for me, because what we just went through has been very, very painful. And so Kwame was like, so I can't speak my mind. Jordan's my friend. I can't, say what I want to say. I have the right to say whatever the hell I want to say. So we can't talk. We can't give our opinions. And so him and Shanita are going back and forth. Kwame is standing his ground that he can say whatever the hell he wants. Shanita is standing her ground that he does not have the right to say whatever he wants to her. And so they're going back and forth. Kwame, sweetheart, you were wrong. You were dead wrong. They're going through a very vulnerable moment right now, and they don't need your jokes. They don't need your flip flap. They don't need it. So that he was completely wrong. He should have apologized immediately. And even though Jordan is your pal, Jordan is still Shanita's husband. And Jordan showed that his loyalty was with Shanita, because they both had to step out of the room and kind of recollect themselves. And then when they came back, like united. So Kwame, look, I know things ain't working out with you and your girl over there, Keisha. Y'all are on completely different pages, but don't mess it up for the other couples. So moving on from there, Kwame and Keisha. So they come up there in front of the experts, and Keisha says that she has a say so as well on where the relationship is going. So in front of the experts, now she kind of turned it around. It wasn't so much about sex. Now it was more about where the relationship is going and the status of their relationship. Now she's saying that I have as much say so as he does on where our relationship is going. Okay, that goes without saying. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. He does not dictate where the relationship is going by himself. But before you were talking about he doesn't have the right to decide when y'all have sex. Now you're talking about he doesn't have the right to decide where the relationship is going. Y'all, I'm lost with Keisha. So the experts tell him, okay, so then he talks about how Keisha locked him out and how that really triggered him. And the experts say to him, well, you need to admit that it hurt you. It hurt your feelings that, Keisha locked you out. Be honest about how you felt. But surprisingly, they both decided to stay. Keisha feels like he's being a chauvinistic pig. He's like, I'm not that really into her. She's not my type. I'm not interested. But then they both chose to stay. Okay. Whatever. Moving on to Laura and Richie. So Laura tells the experts that this was just a little bit too much for her. She was envisioning being matched with someone who was more where she was at as far as past experiences with relationships. So the thing with Laura, from my personal opinion, is that she wanted to be matched with someone who's been through the rigmaroles of relationships, who's had a history of a lot of ups and downs, and now they just want a partner and they just want to chill. They know what it takes to make it work. They know what to do, what not to do in a relationship. Someone who already has the working tools and skills of how to manage a relationship. Your boy, Richie, doesn't have that because he's never really been in a long-term committed relationship. He said he's never been been in love. So because he feels like he's falling in love with Laura, he wants Laura to kind of guide him and nurture him and counsel him on how to maneuver in this thing called love, because he doesn't have a clue. And so Laura's like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not here for that. I wanted someone that would take long walks with me on the beach, into the sunset, someone who I can just chill with. We kind of know where we're at. We know where we've been, and we know how to make it work. He is requiring too much work, too much attention, and I don't have time for that. It's just, zapping all of my energy. So Laura decides to leave, and Richie also decides to leave, but you can tell that Richie was very heartbroken because he felt like Laura was the one. Well, she was the one for about a week or two. Now she's not. So they're going to go their separate ways, and they're out of the experiment. Moving on to Jenna and Zoe. So their whole issue is veganism. Now, I don't think it was such a great idea to match a vegan with a non-vegan, because people who are vegan, they take it to heart. Now, I understand that there's probably people or couples where one partner has turned vegan and the other one decided not to go that way, and maybe that might work a little bit better. I don't know. But the fact that they're constantly arguing about this whole veganism issue, it makes me think that maybe it wasn't a good idea to match a vegan with a non-vegan. Because I don't understand, how, for example, if you are someone who really adores dogs, and you're with someone who's from a culture that eats dogs, it just wouldn't work out. It wouldn't work. You adore dogs. You see dogs as, a variation of humans. You can't be with someone who is okay with slaughtering them and eating them. And I kind of think it's the same way. Jenna adores animals, living, life in all its forms. She holds it all in very high regard. But I don't see how you can match her with someone that wants to tear away at a steak every night and dig into a hamburger and eat lamb chops. It must be very difficult for her. And so the experts say that is not their issue. And I'm like, if that's not their issue, then what is their issue? Everything stems from them arguing about this whole veganism thing. And then also, they're both competing with who's compromising more. And so Zoe says she doesn't feel supported by Jenna. I don't know, y'all. And then when they were talking about how Jenna gives too much information to Zoe about the process of what happens to animals when they're being prepared for human consumption, Zoe was like, I don't want to hear that, because it's going to turn me off to meat. And Jenna says, well, if you're going to ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the truth. And the example that they gave was, Zoe asked Jenna, why doesn't she drink wine? And Jenna said that because they filter the wine through fish guts or something like that, the guts of fish. And so that turned Zoe completely off. Now she doesn't even drink wine. So she's like, I don't want to hear that. And about hens having their periods and all kinds of craziness. And so Jenna was like, well, then don't ask me. If you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to make it less than what it is. I'm not going to make it, pretty. I'm going to give you the cold, hard facts of what you're asking me. So despite all of that, they both decide to stay together. Moving on to Thomas and Adrian. Thomas he's very entertaining. Okay. He's extremely entertaining. He's good for TV, but I don't think his reactions or his emotions are genuine. I think he uses these tactics to deflect, to ignore the real situation. So because of the fact that he's been called out for talking about Shanita and being called out as a liar, he's going to deflect. He doesn't want to face that head on. So he's going to deflect, and he's going to talk about his struggles of being gay, how he's dealt with homophobia, how he's dealt with emotional abuse and verbal abuse. I felt like all of that was just a deflection to avoid the topic at hand, which was, did you say these things about Shanita? That's what I'm thinking. And so when he got really overly dramatic and he started to cry and he had this really huge breakdown, I think he was just trying to garner sympathy points, because it's like, okay, how can we attack someone who's been through so much, who's been through all the things that he's been through? So basically, it's just smoke and mirrors with Thomas. He just put on this show of, poor me, I'm a victim, so don't come for me. Don't ask me about what I said about Shanita, which makes me feel like he really said these things about Shanita because he doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. The only thing he said was that he's not a liar. He's never been a liar. And he was obviously inadvertently referring to the whole Shanita thing. He's like, I'm not a liar and I don't like when people call me a liar. I feel like April and Thomas were both talking about Shanita. Maybe one was saying worse things than the other, because what brought up the topic of Shanita? Shanita seems to be kind of harmless. She seems to be like she wants to get along with everybody. So what brought up the topic of Shanita between these two people? We'll never know because it wasn't on camera. So I feel like if we'll never know, then we really shouldn't even talk about it. But when they were in front of the experts, Thomas dominated the conversation. They didn't talk very much about Adrian or what he's going through. Adrian is just kind of like seen as like a support pet or support animal for Thomas. They didn't go too deep with Adrian. It was the Thomas show. Thomas had completely dominated the conversation. But at the end of the day, they told him that Adrian is good for you. Adrian is a safe place for you, and you can trust him because he wants the best for you. The experts absolutely loved it when Adrian had told Thomas that he wishes he could go back in time and get rid of the things that causes Thomas to put up such strong defenses. So they both decided to stay with one another, and hopefully things will go a little bit better. But yeah, Thomas is a handful. He is definitely a handful. I don't think that Adrian can take it. I don't think he's equipped to deal with someone who's got a personality as big as Thomas's, but I could be wrong, and we shall see. That is the end of my review. Thank you so much for joining me. On your way out, please don't forget to rate the video. If you like this content, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will definitely talk to you later. Bye.